Amazon, you remember that Staten Island vote to unionize? Well, there's another count going on in Alabama where the election is too close to call, and Yahoo Finance's Max Zahn has been following this story extremely closely. Max, what's the update down in Bessemer, Alabama? There are some allegations, as I understand now, that Amazon might be trying to put their thumb on the scales.
Absolutely, Brian. So we're about a week removed from this vote in Bessemer, Alabama. And remember, the union's trailing by about 100 votes. There's still about 400 votes outstanding that are challenge ballots that could swing that result one way or another. But we have had the union, the Retail Wholesale Department Store Union, come forward and say that it has filed objections alleging illegal interference by Amazon on a whole host of fronts. It says that the union has threatened workers, attempting to stop them from getting workers to vote yes. It says it provided a list that had discrepancy to the union of workers who could vote in election. It said that it has threatened workers with closure of the facility. It said it has threatened workers if they discuss the union at the warehouse. So a host of allegations against Amazon. And we must remember, this vote only has happened because a year ago, when we had this initial vote in Bessemer, Alabama, the union successfully challenged Amazon on illegal interference in that union. That resulted in a nullification and a revote. So there is a precedent of success challenging Amazon at this facility. We did have a closer and a narrower election here that, yes, is still pending. So we'll still see what the result of this one is regardless of this challenge. But we have had allegations of illegal interference come from the union already in this vote.
Max, specifically on what's played out in Staten Island, obviously there was that historic vote to unionize among Amazon workers. We now know, because of legal paperwork that's been filed, that Amazon plans to appeal that vote or the decision that came out of it. What's the next step?
Yeah, so in much the same way as we see the union challenging the vote in Bessemer, we have Amazon challenging the vote on Staten Island. It has alleged illegal interference by both the union and by the National Labor Relations Board. Remember, that's the federal agency that carried out this election. When it comes to the union, Amazon says that it threatened workers, making them vote yes. It says it interfered with workers while they were standing in line to vote. And when it comes to the NLRB, Amazon says that the agency held the vote in a manner that caused long lines and delays and depressed turnout. It also says that the agency interfered with workers while they were participating in the vote. Now, these are serious allegations. They're hard to assess, and we don't have a ton of details yet. Amazon says it'll file formal objections by April 22nd. For his part, Eric Milner, he's a lawyer with the Amazon Labor Union, and he's called these allegations patently absurd. Now, when it comes to both of these challenges in the case of Bessemer and Staten Island, as I said, the results are still outstanding. We'll see in the coming weeks and very frankly, probably the coming months. But what we know for sure is that this is going to bring a delay in a resolution to these votes. And we've seen in the week since that historic victory on Staten Island, the labor movement moving toward an intention to organize more facilities nationwide. We heard Chris Smalls, the Amazon Labor Union president, say in the days following that victory, he's been contacted by workers at 50 facilities nationwide. That could amount to hundreds of thousands of workers. So we'll see whether the delay in this final resolution has an impact on that move toward organizing other facilities.
And then, Max, lastly here, I want to ask about one important distinction that maybe people who haven't been following this story might not be aware of. The Staten Island effort was independent. In fact, Chris Smalls, the one who organized it, is actually a former worker, doesn't currently work there, whereas the one in Alabama is organized by the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, an existing network that exists outside of Amazon. How important is that distinction to this discussion?
I think that's a crucial question. And frankly, I think it's hard to say exactly right now what it meant. But you do have to give immense credit to what they did on Staten Island. As you mentioned, this is an independent union. It was formed less than a year ago. It raised money through crowdfunding. It had these leaders who had either been former workers or were current workers at the facility. It had very few, if any, full-time staff employees doing this organizing. And they could use that relationship with workers, which they've talked about, being able to connect directly and get the trust of workers who are taking immense risk when they support this union, going up against a very powerful company, a company that spent millions last year on firms to help fight this organizing. So that was important. But I think it's also important to note that we saw in Bessemer, the Retail Wholesale Department Store Union, as you said, this is a formal standard union. They have about 100,000 members nationwide. They've been around for a long time. And what they did is narrow a gigantic gap. They had lost overwhelmingly by about a 2-to-1 result a year ago. They brought that to, as I said earlier, around 100 vote deficit, and that outcome is still outstanding. And that was in the South, in a state that's much less union friendly than that state in New York is. So I think it's tough to say right now exactly how much it meant that you had that independent worker-led union in Staten Island and you had a more traditional union there in Bessemer. But what you can say for sure is that there's only been one union in the history of the company that came from that independent union in Staten Island.